Let's see. Good morning. Good morning. Actually, it's good afternoon. I need to. Everything's going crazy now. Sorry. Remove. There we go. Anyway, hello. Good day, everyone. I should say good day. That way it counts if it's morning, evening, or afternoon. This is the Morbid Symptoms Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Van Dyke, but just call me Tara. I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't help you out with any of those kinds of ailments. However, political economic issues, economic geography, I'm your gal. Hit me up. I'm very happy that Garret has come back on the show. He's been on a couple of times, but it was before the new year. And he has agreed to come and explain to me like I'm 10 years old, so it's going to be accessible. And I mean this because I really want to understand the vigor, the vitriol, the passion that is still animating and driving what we could call Tankies versus Trots or Trots versus Tankies. And of course, Trots makes me laugh because isn't it an old-fashioned word for having gas, like the vapors or something? If someone has the Trots, or is it like diarrhea? I don't know. But that's not the point.
Some would say that's appropriate.
Ooh, shots fired already. Shots fired. Okay. Anyway, so I don't know. I was hearing something, online, and I was following some of the banter. And, there's like Tanky this and Trots this and Fed and Grifter and Glowy. And I'm just like, what the frick? So, actually, what precipitated this show is I was having a conversation. This happened to me a couple of times, and someone's like, "Well, you've never said what kind of socialist you are or what kind of Marxist you are." And I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean?" Well, like basically what they're asking me is I was like Trotskyist or Stalinist, and I was like, "Well, why does it matter?" And then I kind of play around that. Well, I'm the smart kind, or I'm the thinking kind, or whatever. It's like, can I have a different pill? Do I have to pick? Do I have to pick one? And hopefully at the end of this, I'll know better if I have to pick one, at least have some sort of allegiance to the issues that perhaps they represent that are still with us. And it just was really funny to me. I was like, well, it's kind of like asking me what gender identity I am or what my star sign is. And I was playing around it because it was so important for some of these people to be able to place me in this binary, if you will. And I was like, what, So anyway, I put out a bit of it's an honest tweet, and a couple of people responded with their with a DM about, oh, you should read this or you should look at this, and I was like, I want someone to come on my podcast to explain it to me. So I'm so thankful that Garret, on a very hot and humid day where he is currently located, I don't want to out his geographic location, has agreed to come on and have a conversation with me about what this is or what to make of this. So Garret, anything you'd like to say before we dig into T versus T, Tankies versus Trots, Stalin versus Trotsky?
Well, I'm pretty confident you don't really need the 10-year-old explanation, but I'm really just prepared to talk about like my own personal journey and observations about how Trotskyists tend to move and Stalinists, or as they call themselves generally, Marxist-Leninists, how they tend to move nowadays in respect to activism.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
And the positions they take.
Okay, thank you. So very diplomatic. That's not how I was talking
earlier. Although there's some history too that's important, but I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the history. There's a couple of historical things that have been on my mind.
Okay, so this is a good point. So we'll make it clear. Like, I also obviously am not an expert in Trotsky versus Stalin. Expert. No, I understand like the original split fairly well, or at least what we can get in English or Dutch. But the life it's taken after that, it's a thing to do. But yeah, I'm not an expert. Obviously, Garret is not saying that he's an expert in this era of Soviet or Russian Soviet history. So don't clap at us with showing us some kind of footnote from some random book, thinking it proves something. Now, if you want to quote at us, that's fine. But you have to explain. Have a couple of sentences like, okay, you said this. But here's this quote, and I think it shows us and this. You just can't throw a tweet at us or a quote at us and think that proves anything. Just want to
I
put
have
a
one
preventive
historical
statement out there.
citation.
Yeah, no citation.
I have one historical citation, but it's from a primary document. It's not just Trotskyists and Stalinists yelling at each other.
Well, there you go. Going to the source, to the archive. Love it. Okay, so anyway, let's talk first about just who is Trotsky. Just a brief, just the most, just kind of a brief biographical sketch of hitting the highlights or the lowlights of Trotsky, as you understand them, and then we'll do one with Stalin, and then we'll get into the feud a bit.
Leon Trotsky, born, I believe, Lev Bronstein.
That's right.
Was Ukrainian Jewish Marxist revolutionary, Ukrainian and/or Russian, meaning that was part of the Russian Empire, and I guess you could say he was one of the pioneers of Russian Marxism, and a major figure, maybe the leading figure in the 1905 revolution that failed. More prominent than Lenin in that revolution. And not a member of the Bolshevik Party until a few months before the 1917 revolution, which was successful, which was primarily led by the Bolsheviks and Lenin, with Trotsky, many would say, is second in command, but not someone deeply embedded in the Bolshevik Party. And from there, just read Animal Farm.
Animal
where he is allegorically depicted. He is allegorically depicted as Snowball.
Which one is he?
Snowball. And Stalin is allegorically depicted as Napoleon. But many people.
Hold on. No, we can't just fly by this. So already you've taught me two things. Okay, I knew that he was involved in the 1905 attempt, but I didn't know that he wasn't. I didn't know that he was more involved in that than Lenin was. And I read Animal Farm back in high school. I guess probably didn't. Maybe my teacher was too afraid of. I don't know. But so in Animal Farm, Snowball was based on Trotsky, and the pig whose name was what? Napoleon, or
the pig Snowball represents Trotsky, and the pig Napoleon represents Stalin.
Okay, so Napoleon represents Stalin in Animal Farm, and oh crap, what was the other one's name?
Snowball.
Snowball. I was thinking Bunny Rabbit, but I'm like Bunny Rabbit. No, Snowball. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been a while. Okay. Next time, when one of my kids has to read that for school, I might read that with them, and then I'll have that in mind, and it'll be a whole other experience. But just because, before you go on, just because you mentioned 1905, according to the internet, this is a picture of him from when he was arrested in 1905, probably for participating in that failed revolution or whatever it is. And I just want to say that both of them have fantastic hair. I mean, I don't know what's going. I mean, Lenin. No, he didn't. He wasn't. He didn't.
Oh, you mean young Stalin too?
Well, this is young Trotsky. Look at that hair.
Yeah, I'm saying both Stalin.
But
and Trotsky,
both of them. Yeah, I'm saying they both had amazing
yeah.
hair. I mean, hello. But anyway, and these little glasses. I mean, those are. I guess you'd have a little cane on them. I mean, I was actually going
to ask you about Trotsky's potential sex appeal, because there's the whole Frito Kahlo thing, and there's the whole
Oh, did Frito and
Trotsky got together? Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Nice. Well, here, I don't know, he's probably short. Yeah, was he short? Because that's a problem for me. But saying, you got to be 5'10" or over. well, not that it matters anymore, but now if I'm just looking at this guy, I'm like, yeah, he's cool. I mean, his mouth, he has kind of like his features are kind of close together, like a bit more spread out, but he's rocking this kind of he reminds me of somebody. I don't even know. But the hair and the glasses, I mean, I would want to have a coffee with him, yeah. But or if we go to vodka, I don't know. But yeah, no, the hair and this thing going on here, I mean, these glasses, the piercing, I mean, he's kind of skinny, but it probably not a lot of, I mean, there was maybe hard times back then. I don't know. Anyway, yes. And then I have another picture. Here he is, I guess, that must be him and Lenin. I don't know.
I think so. I've seen the picture.
I think so, yeah. See, now here he's not, and here he's looking a bit weather worn. Here I'd be like, but, but revolution takes its toll. Anyway.
He looks heavier than I.
Yeah. Maybe he has lots of layers. I mean, it's cold.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you remember, so I'm guessing was Animal Farm negative against both of them, or did Animal Farm take a side?
No,
such as it is.
Primarily against. I mean, that is one of the kind of the suspicious things when you think about it. About I guess Trotsky is that he's portrayed positively in that book, and then that book was promoted by the CIA. Granted, after Orwell died, but they financed a cartoon adaptation to be shown all over the world. But I mean, I guess you could say it's because the story of the novel sort of suggests that revolution is hopeless. You'll
like
be betrayed.
Don't bother. It won't end well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Whichever pig you are, it won't end well. Okay, well, fair enough. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, and now, well, I think people are probably know who Stalin was, but if you want to say anything about him before we get to the break, when Trotsky was exiled, and it was clear that Stalin was going to be I don't want to say heir apparent, but maybe that's accurate, and that he wasn't.
Well, Stalin came from Georgia and from a more humble background, and his parents sent him to seminary school to get an education, and he seriously, but he thought he could do more for the downtrodden as a militant socialist revolutionary, and he was, I believe, a co-founder of the Bolsheviks underneath Lenin, or at least a very early member. And so he was more of Lenin's apprentice. Many would say he was not Lenin's intellectual equal, unlike Trotsky.
Okay.
On the basis of not writing as many books. But others would say he was a strategic genius. I don't know. Yeah. That debate is one of the ones that may never be resolved. What?
Yeah. He did end up in terms of the Game of Thrones, to use a reference.
Yeah.
He did end up on the
definitely played politics well.
Yeah. Okay. So now, what was the big? Let's start. What was the big break? So why did what was Trotsky's beef with Stalin and those who thought that he was the way to go after Lenin's passing?
This is something that I am not an expert on, because I mean, there's so many.
It's fine. Hearsay, people.
There's so much he said, she said on this, that it just goes back and forth,
Ooh,
and is
spicy.
extremely dense.
Okay. Well,
But
just
I mean, Trotsky led what was called the left opposition, and I suppose that's sort of the fast track out of capitalism, out of state capitalism, uh, out of out of socialism into full communism, um, and um, Trotsky and I'm sorry, and by most accounts, Lenin, uh, believed you had to take things slow, uh, and they, I suppose you would say, wanted to be a bit less ideological um, and a bit more improvisational, uh, uh, reacting to the circumstances that they were under in the 1920s, and even in the 1910s. As soon shortly after the revolution starts, and they have to decide how they're going to deal with the fact that there isn't a global revolution, as Marx and Engels hoped that there would be. They had gone off script in the first place by the fact that the revolution had started off in Russia, which is a backwards, barely industrialized country, in 1917, rather than in Germany, and then didn't even take off in Germany in 1918, but was instead crushed. The revolt that Rosa Luxemburg and the Spartacists led. So it's gone off the sort of Marx and Engels theory, but they're doing well in Russia, and they have to sort of decide: is it going to be totally improvisational from here, or do we still try and go with the Marx and Engels projections of what happens next, which were vague in the first place? And also that another division between Lenin and Trotsky, although to be, but Lenin was a stubborn genius who held out for his own way, and usually it turned out to be the right way. I think.
Hey, Garret.
Lenin,
sorry, you're on my end. You're cutting in and out a bit. Now, I see that you have your background blurred. Is that for security reasons?
Basically, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
It looks like
no, it's fine. No, it's just that because I thought about doing that myself, and then I read that it takes up like processing time, and it could make the feed slower. But that could just be whatever. But that's up to you if you want to have it on, because it was fine. It just started just like the last 30 seconds going in and out a bit. But we'll just keep an eye on it. Go ahead. Sorry. Or an ear on it.
Well, let me know if it happens again, and then maybe I'll adjust it. But is a fake background less intensive or more?
No, it's the same. It's the same. But it could be. Who knows? It's just it could make no difference. It's just that I was just. It's fine. I mean, it's up to you. If you're comfortable with that, then that's fine. I'm not gonna, require you. I just wanted to make you aware of it.
It's primarily because the place is a mess. But
well, that's all. Yeah, I get. Believe me, that's why I was like thinking, do I have to like throw my stuff around, or can I? And that's why I thought about doing the fake background. And then I read that, and then also I gesticulate a lot, so it looks like I'm in some your people are on acid if they're watching me. Whereas you're very calm. You don't move around a lot when you're talking. So anyway, sorry, people. We're back on track.
Yeah.
Yes. So, do you remember where you were, or should I help you out?
Well, Lenin, as I said, is generally agreed to be a bit more pragmatic than Trotsky, and maybe a better politician, and very confident of himself because he was the founder of the Bolshevik Party, and Trotsky was not. He was a
Mm.
comer to the party, very valuable to the Revolutionary War effort. To defeat the White Russians and the 14 foreign imperialist armies that invaded Russia in 1918 and stayed till 1920 or 1922 in the case of the Japanese army. But in 1918, before the Civil War really popped off, the priority was ending World War I, because the Bolsheviks had won over the Russian people with their slogan "Land, Peace, Bread," and the peace component is pulling out of World War I, which was just a meat grinder for the Russian people. And so Lenin was ready to sign an unfavorable peace treaty with the Germans, losing part of the Russian Empire. And Trotsky didn't want to do that. And to be fair, a lot of the other Bolsheviks didn't either. But Trotsky was the lead one because he was actually foreign minister at the time, and they sent him to do the negotiations at the city of Brest-Litovsk, is what it was called, the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. And but ultimately, yeah, Trotsky was actually trying to, he was trying to talk Lenin into not basically surrendering to the Germans, and see if the German Revolution would become stronger and they could, march into Germany, and so on and so forth. But it didn't happen. So the Bolsheviks signed this unfavorable peace treaty and lost part of the Russian Empire. And basically, right then and there, kind of made a commitment to socialism in one country, at least as a short-term program, which Trotsky, only reluctantly agreed to. And to be fair, again, most of the Russian left only reluctantly agreed to. And part of the Russian left then actually joined the White Russians, although not the majority.
Now, when you say White Russians, do you mean just because? You don't mean just because they were white. Does that mean something else?
No, white as opposed to red.
Okay, I'm sorry, Garrett. See, I told you, like a 10-year-old. I was like, White Russians, because you say that, and then I think of the drink, and then I think of the Big Lebowski. And then I'm like, okay. So the White Russians
the drink may have been named as a salute to them because, as I said, the Western governments sided with them, interfered in the Russian Civil War, and egged them on.
So I just wanted to let people know, in these very, I almost said gender, good God help me, race sensitive times, that, and for people who are like me, don't know a tremendous lot near enough about this part of history, when he says White Russians, he's not referring to their skin, he's referring to their political allegiance.
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, that term, I think it's used in other it's used in other civil wars that involve communists, the Reds versus the Whites.
Well, the Whites. I knew about the Reds, but I didn't know it was the Reds versus the Whites. Okay. Yeah. See, now I've learned 3 things already.
This is the first time it was used. In those terms, and I guess some people would say the terms aren't appropriate if you're a non-Bolshevik socialist, because there were non-Bolshevik socialists who, as I said, went over to the white side. But the white side was definitely originally founded by supporters of the Tsar, monarchists, theocrats, anti-Semites, not nice guys who waged lots of pogroms, massacres of Jews, and so on, and promoted the protocols of the the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was a czarist forgery that the White Russians they spread it to the West.
So we could say, Garret, to you, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt a bit. We could say, using the parlance of our times, that the White Russians were a box of deplorables. Would you? Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. If you mean that in the narrow sense, I mean, if you mean that in the
well, compared to who Hillary was talking about, I mean, they seem to warrant that blanket statement more than.
Yeah.
Sorry. I like to throw some humor in every once in a while on these serious topics. But Garret, I also have to say that you had sold yourself short, which is a smart thing to do because you're quite the historical buff here. But it was wise to lower our expectations as we went in.
Well, I'm interested a lot in the Russian Revolution, but I mean the real split, the final split comes after the revolution, which I don't know so well. Okay. But Trotsky, definitely made a great contribution to the revolution, and then what's called the Russian Civil War. Although I really think of it as just an extension of the revolution, especially since it wasn't really a civil war because all these foreign armies came in on the side of the conservatives. But then after the Civil War, Lenin starts to have a lot of health problems. He got there was an attempted assassination on him during the Civil War in 1918, and so he had health problems for a while, and then they got very bad in the early 20s. He had a stroke, and so there's a bit of a power struggle. How much of a power struggle depends on who you ask. Who's going to succeed Lenin? Mm-hmm. But we know for sure that Lenin did give Stalin the top administrative position, not Trotsky.
Before okay.
Yeah.
And if I could just stop you for 1 second, just to say, how were they selected? Was it just the party that was going to decide who would follow Lenin after Lenin's death? Was there some sort of vote, or I mean, who decided? If you know,
the long story short, the party. Yeah.
Okay, the Bolshevik Party.
Deciding.
Okay.
Who in the Central Committee would succeed Lenin? Yeah.
Okay.
Or again, as I said, it's.
Mm-hmm. No, it's okay. If you don't know, you don't know. I was just wondering.
It's very complicated, all these administrative things, and
because I was thinking maybe
at the time they were sorting
it
out themselves because it's a new revolutionary government.
Well, for sure. No, I knew there wouldn't have been like a general vote, but I was just thinking like if it was. I know a bit about how the at least today, or the established Chinese system works between the party and the state, but. I didn't know, and of course, I grant, of course, that lots of things were going on, so it could have been like they didn't have time to run a huge campaign. But I just was wondering if there was just because you said that he was that politically, so there must have been some maybe horse trading or some negotiation behind the scene, or was it always kind of a fait accompli that it would have been that Trotsky didn't have a chance to beat out Lenin, or not Lenin, but Stalin for the top spot, so to speak.
Well, that definitely seems to have been the way that Lenin left it. Now there's controversy that Lenin, as he was dying, dictated a testament to his wife that he didn't trust Stalin, and now that he was certain that he was going to die, he didn't want to leave leadership in the hands of Stalin. But this is contested because, as I said, he didn't write it. So people say that the wife didn't like Stalin. She interfered in this.
Oh my God!
Some people say it's
Garret. Oh,
yeah.
Just so before I break down. Yeah. So before I break down laughing, you think I'm laughing at Lenin's deathbed? Are you familiar with the House of Dragon?
No.
You're not? Okay. Well, people who have not watched the first season of House of Dragon, spoiler alert, you might want to mute for a second. Okay, so there's this just really quick. I mean, because they totally must have lifted this right out of the history books. So the king is dying, and he had a daughter by his first marriage, and all the other kids that the wife had died. They were sons; they all died, and he decided that he was going to be like, no, whatever. I'm breaking the tradition. She's going to be the heir apparent. Then there's like some intrigue, and someone starts pushing their daughter on him, and he marries his daughter, who then has 3 sons. And so and it's saying, so she says, and at the end the king is like, he's like totally in really really bad shape and can barely, he's like in bed all the time and drugged all the time. And she thinks that the story comes out that he told her right before he died that he didn't want his daughter to be the heir, that he wanted his son to be the heir, and so on. And then from this leads this whole, as you can imagine, Game of Thrones prequel battle. But when you were telling me the story, and it's the same thing. She didn't really trust her daughter-in-law, who originally they were good friends, but the thing like distrust, especially her father was whispering in her ear, like, it should be your son, it should be your son, it should be your son. And so literally, really word for word, deathbed says something. She interprets it to mean that he doesn't want his daughter to be the heir, but his son with her, which isn't what he meant. But she thinks that that's what he meant, and her father kind of encourages her to think that. And this whole thing happens. So okay. Everyone can unmute now, although they can't hear me. But when you were telling me that, I was just like, oh my gosh, they totally just.
That's why I said it's kind of a soap opera.
Okay, so just to reiterate, so there's one speculation, or one possibility, is that, so it's widely believed that he would have, that since Stalin had the position that right directly under him, that says a lot about how he felt about Stalin, and that Stalin was kind of his protege, or he was kind of a mentor to him. And but there's also this rumor, who knows, that on his deathbed he had he changed his mind,
second thoughts,
had second thoughts, and withdrew right before he passed on to the nether region. Withdrew his letter of recommendation for Joe. Okay.
But I mean, really, the politics of it are, to me, it seems, I don't know. As I said, it's worth reviewing that, yeah, Stalin was more of Lenin's protege, and Trotsky had been his rival and not a founder of the Bolshevik Party. So it notwithstanding any of this stuff, notwithstanding Stalin's particular personality or ambitions or Lenin's feelings, it does kind of seem natural that he would end up being the outsider. Mm-hmm. But the divisions that they had, I suppose, is that Lenin did make accommodations with capitalism out of necessity, because, as I said, they had all this foreign interference, like actual foreign military interference for a time in Soviet Russia. And they kind of just barely fought them off. And so they were, they no question had an authoritarian government, and it was even authoritarian towards the workers, because they just had to,
crack the whip,
do all this intensive, manufacturing and military discipline. And I think Trotsky had a problem with that. He had a problem that then in the new economic program, Lenin was making use of markets because they needed to end the economic crisis that they were in. So it would cause an incentive for business people to produce more, and also to have less authoritarianism in terms of production, that there would be some profit motives allowed to get the economy functioning again in the face of all these things, with his ongoing sanctions from the Western governments in the 1920s, trying to starve them out, which they were doing a great job of doing. There was all kinds of famine in the 1920s. It was not the first famine that Russia had ever seen by any means, but it was something that the Bolsheviks had to get out of if they were going to have a functioning government going forward. And Trotsky wasn't comfortable with these reforms because they were a compromise with capitalism. As I said, he was more of a strict, Marxist ideologue, maybe an idealist, some would say. Whereas Stalin was amenable to these things, although ultimately Stalin would, when he felt like the new economic program wasn't working, and the West, the West wasn't responding in kind. The capitalists weren't responding in kind to this accommodation, this olive branch that had been offered to them. Then Stalin came down, hard again in terms of like forced collectivization, and rode straight to socialism, by authoritarian means. Although I think he had gotten rid of Trotsky by that point, ironically. But
okay, if I could just ask you to clarify something to make sure I understand correctly. So it seems like you're making the connection. It makes sense to me that to better understand the decisions and the directions that Russia under Stalin took, you have to understand the geopolitical situation, the pressures that they were under. So it seems like you're saying that, one of the reasons that the collectivization became so intensified is because they were kind of locked out of of certain markets. And so he had to get more authoritarian about collectivization and trying to increase the productivity and deciding what to make, how, and whatnot. Is that a fair summary of what you said?
Yeah, and Stalin understood himself to be at war with the imperialists by the early 30s, and they're like mainstream academic scholars who have written about this. There's an article called "Stalin at War." I should
Stalin at War.
Maybe I can look it up. But
and I can also anything you mentioned that we don't have, I'll add in the notes later that people can reference.
Yeah.
Stalin at War.
There's a book called Spectre of War by Jonathan Haslam, too, which is about the lead up to World War II in both Germany and Russia. That talks about some of this too, and it talks about the Trotsky Stalin rivalry as well, in some interesting ways, mostly involving geopolitics. But yeah, I think geopolitics is an underrated thing. Like, Stalin kind of does what he does in the context of, as I said, there's beginning under right before Lenin dies, they're trying to sort of accommodate and do peaceful coexistence with the capitalists, both domestically and foreign, with the new economic program, where they're doing kind of like market socialism, and it doesn't really work out either domestically or in foreign policy. And fascism starts to rise in the 1920s. There's Mussolini. And then Hitler attempts his coup in 1923, and they let him out of jail after less than a year, which is kind of a sign. And Mein Kampf comes out, and so Stalin starts to get really paranoid that they're building up these fascists to invade from the West, which turned out to be true. And he said that we only have 10 years to industrialize. So he cracked the whip really hard. Anyway, and I mean, and that's may have been part of the.
So what you're saying
division
is
with
there
Trotsky.
was very material reasons for the things that Stalin did, that he wasn't just an evil dude who liked to make people suffer. Is that what you're?
Yeah,
Is that
I
the
mean
crazy claim you're making, Garrett?
that was the logic,
Okay,
and
continue, please.
it's got some justification.
Mm.
But Trotsky didn't seem to be having that, and I think him and some of the other Bolsheviks were saying that there should be more direct workers' control of the factories. But I'm not, super well read on that, to be honest. But let's just say that both Lenin and Stalin had a very survivalist mentality. And they believed in socialism in one country. They knew that world revolution was not going to happen in the short term. They believed it could happen in the long term if you could sort of do like proof of concept in one country. But in order to do that, the regime had to survive. Mm-hmm. So they would do that by any means necessary. Mm-hmm. And that's where the ruthlessness of Stalinism comes from.
Okay. And if I may, because I should know a bit more about the economic geography there, but what were things in particular that was really damaging for them not to be able to import? Because I know that Russia's a big country, but of course, transportation takes a while. So were there particular things that were really particularly pernicious sanctions, I guess we would call them, even back then?
Well,
or was it mainly just not having the working class and the machinery and all of that was the issue?
Well, yeah, I mean, as I said, it was a backwards, only semi-industrialized country. So they, in order to make use of the resources, they needed to have the sort of state-of-the-art technology and consultations from engineers from the West who are familiar with that. And they did get that little by little. There's a whole conspiracy theory about that on the right, about how eventually the West, did start trading with Stalin, and they did start sending engineers, petroleum engineers, and all of these, energy engineers and consultants to develop industry in Stalin's era. But I would say that's the fact that capitalism has to expand. I mean, it has to. It doesn't have a choice.
And also, it seems kind of ethno-chauvinist. Yeah, like, they couldn't have possibly done it on their own. So people from over here must have gone over there to, help them out.
But it is a fact that people from the West did eventually come over. But
then it was like some sort of government.
But as I said, I mean, the whole idea. I mean, under the Tsars, that it was a backwards country, and they didn't have a well-developed industry to develop their resources. But
it was mainly
the capitalist markets.
It was mainly peasantry. Yeah, what was the percentage of peasantry? Like 80% or something, maybe, or just as a rough estimate?
It's definitely the majority of the economy was agriculture.
Yeah. Okay.
And what was I going to say? But I mean, the capitalist global market can't ignore 1/5. Particularly during the Great Depression. So also, as I said, there is a possibility that the USSR could have, developed itself gradually in the 30s. They were kind of starting to do it anyway before some of the Westerns helped them, but as I said, it was the Great Depression. Like the capitalists were looking for,
anything, yeah,
to just ended trade with half the world, or half the resources in the world, which are in Russia. And then Trotsky, when he's in exile, he's like chiding Stalin for this, like, oh, you're collaborating with the capitalists, and now you have diplomatic relations with the capitalists. Like, Roosevelt started to open full diplomatic relations and trade in 1933. But besides the U.S., bad relations with the rest of the Western world. So again, Stalin was quite paranoid.
So it sounds familiar. Now I'm starting to understand why people are still calling each other's people Trotskyists and whatnot.
Yeah. As far as politics,
yeah.
And the thing that I think we kind of is relevant to us, because it's like there's this debate that we both took part in with Chris Coutron and Sublation and the Palestine thing.
Don't say that name. No. I'm kidding. It's fine.
So they rep as Trotskyists, and the image of Trotskyism, and I guess the tradition of it, of organized Trotskyism, is supposed to agree with everything that Lenin says usually.
Mm-hmm.
Because Lenin got Stalin, who seized, who am I breaking up again?
Yeah.
What do you think I should do?
Well, what we could do, we could just keep on going, or we could take like a couple minute break, and you could tidy up behind you, and undo the thing. It's up to you. Because about 90% is fine, and then every once in a while, just kind of there's just a gap, and I miss a couple of words, but it's up to you.
Let me see here.
Yeah. See, now I can only see you're from your shoulders up. So anything on the ground, I cannot see, Garret.
Right.
All right.
Well, see, at the same time, it says on my settings here, for best performance, we recommend using a green screen.
Yeah, no, but the green screen is you have to have a green screen behind you, and then the fake screen looks better.
Oh, well, and it doesn't. Green screen.
Yeah, okay. Literally green screen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because then the background, the virtual backgrounds look better, and they don't shimmy and shake as much.
All right. Okay.
Well, we'll see. Well,
because, now I'm really like Haas, where it's kind of like
I like it. Nice. Yep. Hey, maybe Garret, if you're single, we'll be like, hey, ladies.
This is definitely going on my Tinder.
Yeah, I'd be like,
the screenshot.
I don't know, but I don't think there's a ring on that finger. Anyway, so we'll see, and I'll let you know because if the sound if it doesn't go shaky again, then we know that was part of it, and if it does, then I'll let you know, and you can go blurry again if you want.
I thought you were making. I blurred because I thought you were making fun of my extinguisher before being
no. And I'm glad that you raised the camera so any of the dead bodies around are not visible. Whatever kind of side hustles. Okay, sorry. It was it's laugh or cry. Okay, where were we? Okay, so it's the Great Depression. The capitalist powers were not were kind of doing what they could to make.
They were doing good cop, bad cop. I think.
Okay, go ahead.
You could say they were doing good cop, bad cop, or at least that was Stalin's, suspicious view of it, because he didn't trust them. I guess you could say there was more divisions where Germany and Italy, obviously were going full fascist and aggressive towards the Soviets. And America and France were a bit more friendly, and then Britain was. Well, I think Britain was crypto-fascist in the 30s, but that's just me. But there's a lot of evidence of that, actually. That's in that book that I mentioned, the Jonathan Haslam book.
Well, I watched Peaky Blinders.
What?
Yeah, I watched Peaky Blinders, and it seemed pretty proto-fascist. But I don't know how I don't know how historically accurate that is.
Was Churchill in that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the weird thing about Churchill is that he was totally crypto-fash in like the 20s, and he was part of that invasion of Soviet Russia, and he even he was doing like anti-Semitic stuff that actually came from the White Russians. That it was the Bolsheviks were all dominated by Jews, which is something that they.
I'm sorry.
What? But
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm sorry about the White Russian. Still cracks me up. Continue.
What was I going to say? But then of course in the 30s, Churchill starts to get more scared of Hitler than he is of Stalin, and realized that like Hitler is a loose cannon, and if World War II pops off, you don't know exactly what will happen, and you may lose the British Empire, which of course is what happened. But World War II was going to happen anyway by that point, because there's no controlling Hitler, or at least there wasn't any controlling Hitler by the time Churchill was in power. He wasn't in power until 1939. The guys who were running Britain before Churchill certainly could have stopped Hitler when Hitler was weaker. Which again is in the world. So what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I wanted to I was going to talk about like Trotskyist and imperialism, because
let me know when you want me to bring that letter up. I'm waiting for you to let me know.
Yeah. Because Cutrone, in like his position on Palestine, like he was trying to bring up some stuff about Lenin and Ireland, and that Lenin didn't support the petty bourgeois in Ireland or something. He didn't support the Irish Revolution, and that's just like it's just not true. And he, as I said, he was even like citing these things, but when you go back to the primary documents, and a lot of them are up online at Marxist.org, Lenin pretty much unconditionally supported the Irish Revolution, the original Irish Rising of 1916, and much of what happened after that. Even though the socialist component started to drop out pretty quickly, because there was this fellow named James Connolly, who was a revolutionary Marxist, who helped start the Irish Revolution in 1916, but he was killed quite early on, and the influence of his Marxist organization declined. But still, Lenin and the Soviet Union in general supported Irish independence. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, and Cutrone was trying to make it sound like they didn't, because there were so many backwards elements among the Irish, and petty bourgeois, and Irish Catholic fundamentalism. I don't think Cutrone mentioned that, but that was a big factor in the Irish Revolution, but it was a factor that Lenin totally discounted. Right? He didn't care that there were Irish Catholic fundamentalists largely leading the movement. He just had a theory of imperialism and of national self-determination that didn't care about the cultural aspects of the anti-colonial forces.
Yeah, because I remember when you brought that up, because I was just so aghast when we're talking about Chris Cutrone, who's like the philosopher king of sublation media. And I think it was maybe like 10 days after October 7th, he was on Doug Lane was talking to him. And I was so aghast when he started saying that, basically just repeating any kind of idea of talking point there was, including saying that they had to drug and meth up the young men in Gaza for them to fight and all. And after that, I was just like, what's happening? That I missed that. And of course, I don't have the expertise in this history that you do. But it was also, it's almost like he was trying to project his sociopathy onto Lenin. Like Lenin is just like this, this dialectic automaton, and just says, okay, well, there's too many of this and there's not enough of that, so screw them. I don't or it can't be, or we shouldn't support it, or has something to do with the left. I think maybe he was trying to project on that. But it was just such a shocking thing for me, because I really enjoyed listening to his talks, and also some of the other people, Platypus. But then once I heard that, I started to think, well, maybe he just talks a good game. Maybe he just talks in such a confident way, just, never with any, just that you think, oh, well, this guy really knows, what he's talking about. And I'm sure maybe some ways he does, but just some of when you're starting to make,
when you look at
the mistakes that you found
on Lenin, it's, as I said, it's just total BS. And, I posted in that thread.
Yeah. So on that, do you want to read this letter, or do you want me to read this? Because this is right what you're talking about now, about the Irish Revolution and the letter between Connolly and Trotsky.
Well, yeah, James Connolly's daughter, who did not participate in the revolution directly. This is years after the revolution. But,
I'm sorry. Do you want to get to this later? I'm sorry, Garret. Do you want to get to this later, or no?
No, I could talk about it now.
Okay.
I just think it's really interesting, because we already started talking about Ireland. I just think it's really interesting that this kind of illustrates that Trotsky was not. He was not. I'm not sure he wasn't truly an anti-imperialist at all, or he did not have it as a priority the same way that Lenin did. And his version of communism by any means necessary was that if you have to bring in communism via imperialism, via the guns of foreigners, then you can do so. So he doesn't want to elevate nationalism too much, because he thinks that's a way it could legitimately be done. That academic guy, Jonathan Haslam, actually, again, in his book, he points out that Trotsky, he criticized Stalin to high heaven for most of his policies, but Trotsky actually kind of liked it when, after the Hitler-Stalin pact, which Stalin didn't really want to do. I mean, Hitler didn't want to do it either, but I mean, it's kind of as a last resort, when Stalin saw he had no allies, and the Munich Agreement, the British had basically rubber stamped Hitler, taking Czechoslovakia and starting to march east. He thought this would buy him some time, and then, of course, as a realpolitik, geopolitical security measure, Stalin marches into the Baltic states, right? And he takes them over to make sure that Hitler doesn't get them when the confrontation comes, which it came less than 2 years after the Hitler-Stalin pact.
Okay, just to stop you right there, because I think no. I just want to clarify, yeah, because of course the Russia or Stalinist Russia's march through Eastern Europe would have been obviously was a point of contention for people who are trying to sell or trying to
we're anti-Stalin.
Accept Stalin as the leader, not just of the Communist Party in Soviet Union, but maybe globally or something kind of like that. So what you're saying, if I understand it, is that one of the reasons, or maybe the main reason, or the main reason why he decided to go into Eastern Europe was as a preventative measure, because he could see or was concerned that if he didn't do that, or if they didn't do that, obviously he didn't do it himself, that Hitler and the Third Reich would take over those places. Right. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, Hitler had already taken Czechoslovakia 2 years before, or a year and a half before. But the reason I got off in that tangent is because Trotsky actually supported that. It was one of the few things that he liked, that Stalin started to march west, because Trotsky liked Napoleon. Trotsky, saw Napoleon as a progressive force in history, just in terms of chopping down the old aristocracy. Even if you did it, to a large degree against the will of the population, and just
so he was extra vanguardy. Trotsky was very vanguard.
Yeah, well, that was his version.
Like a bulldozer.
Um, and oddly enough, Stalin was kind of more reluctant about that, if only because he thought it was a bit reckless, to go have too many foreign adventures. And obviously, things did not end well for Napoleon. But Trotsky said that didn't matter because Napoleon still struck a blow against the old aristocracies, and helped stimulate this national. Um, so for that reason, For that reason, I think Trotsky is very lukewarm on anti-imperialism, even though Trotsky is don't like to talk about. That was one of the real differences between Trotsky and Lenin, right? So in this letter, it's like James Connolly's daughter. So she's an Irish revolutionary, and she wrote to Trotsky to basically invite his help with developing Marxism, communism. In Ireland, and I think I'm guessing actually she also kind of felt sorry for him because he was in exile and he was kind of roaming all over Europe. And it's very sad. He's literally the wandering Jew, and she's got connections in the Irish. She's got connections in the Irish government, so she can get him citizenship, or at least.
Okay. Subtext here. So you're saying that,
and also I think she may have a crush on him. I just get that sense.
Ooh. Ladies' man. Yeah. Do you want to read the letter, or should I read it, Garret?
Well, maybe you can read Nora Connolly, and I'll read Trotsky.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to read Nora Connolly's article, letter to Trotsky, and I think it was in 1927 that she wrote it. Okay, here we go. I won't do an Irish accent, though. Dear comrade, a comrade here has promised to get this letter to you. First, introduce myself. I am the daughter of James Connolly, a worker in the socialist movement all his life, as you know, Commander General in the Rising of Easter Week in 1916. He was executed. I learned that you're extremely interested in Ireland and the development of the revolutionary movements here. If you desire it, I would gladly supply you with whatever items of information you require. There is not at present any labor paper, but there will be by the end of May. I will send you copies if you wish. There is one paper issued by the National Revolutionaries, the Irish Republican Army, and one issued by the CP. These also I will send you if you wish. I hold an official position in the Irish Citizen Army. I am a member of the Irish Labour Party, and I am in close touch with officials of the Irish Republican Army. The Labour Party recently adopted a new program and constitution, the first step towards achieving this leading role in the revolutionary movement in Ireland. The new program is not yet a correct revolutionary one, but it is such an enormous advance on the previous one that we are not indulging in any carping or cavilling criticism. Through it, they can supply an alternative to Fianna Fáil, Fianna Fáil. I don't know if I'm saying that right. The majority Republican Party in the Irish Parliament. Oops. As by adopting James Connolly's doctrine of the twin ideals of national and social independence, they have ended the divorce between the national and labor movements. The program will be ready shortly. I could also send you a copy. This is not much of a letter, really. It is only to establish contact. Nora Connolly O'Brien. So now,
Trotsky writes back from Norway. Okay. 2 months later, June 6th. Dear comrade, it's starting to rain and hail here. I don't know if you could hear it.
I heard that. I thought maybe you had like a roommate doing dishes or something. He was like,
yeah. It's also getting dark. Should I turn the light on?
I can see you all right, but okay. Yeah. Okay.
Dear comrade, I was very touched by your kind letter. A great deal of circumstances prevented me from writing you immediately. I always have been greatly interested in Ireland, but unfortunately my interest remained only platonic. Kind of a flirty aside there. But I never had the opportunity to study in detail Irish history and politics. Since my early days, I have got, through Marx and Engels, the greatest sympathy and esteem for the heroic struggle of the Irish for their independence. The tragic fate of your courageous father met me in Paris during the war. I think the grammar in this letter is a little weird, but I think that means that, I mean, he found out about the death of your father while I was in Paris during the war. I bear him faithfully in remembrance. I made up my mind to read your book about your father in the very next time, which I guess means the next
future.
time
near future.
Exchange letters. The revolutionary tradition of the national struggle is a precious good. Would it be possible to imbue the Irish proletariat with it for its socialist class struggle? The working class of your country could, in spite of the numerical weakness of your population, play an important historical role and give a mighty impulse to the British working class now paralyzed by the senile bureaucracy. I take liberty to send you, in the same time, my little book in defense of terrorism, Trotsky, which is better known by the name, it's kind of a heavy title, but it's better known by the name Terrorism and Communism, by the way.
Oh, Terrorism and Communism. Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it's actually about, state terrorism. It's about executing, enemies of the revolution. It's not about guerrilla warfare.
Okay. So how would you interpret that exchange, Garret, in terms of Trots versus Tankies?
So I came across this letter because I read a couple of articles online. You can probably just find them, searching just about, the position of the Soviet Union on Ireland and the Bolsheviks on Ireland. Which, as I said, started with Lenin, inspired by Marx and Engels, who wrote quite a bit about Irish independence and how it was a revolutionary force, particularly against the British Empire, who were the leading empire and capitalist empire in the world in the 19th century, and still into the first half of the 20th century. And as I said, Lenin wrote several articles about it, and some asides about it, thousands of words overall. I don't think Trotsky ever did write about it. And he acknowledges in the letter, I think significantly, that, like, contrary to what you may think, because
I don't know.
because you're conflating me with Lenin, I actually haven't read a whole lot about Ireland. Right? And
I'm not who I think I am.
Right? He's certainly, gently, acknowledging this, that I haven't been keeping up with Ireland, and it's maybe not one of my top priorities, other than what I got through Marx and Engels. Yeah, I mean, and as I say, I think that's kind of significant because when you said Cutrone and some of his ilk, which maybe was representative of most Trotskyists, seemed to have this kind of cultural ideal or progressive, perfectionism that would discount them ever supporting, Hamas or any, group that doesn't meet their checklist of what's, culturally revolutionary.
Yeah, I have a new name for that.
I think they may have got they may have generally gotten this from Trotsky.
Okay,
but I don't think they got it from Lenin.
No, because I was thinking that's kind of the thing, because I know that also whenever, just to put it in contemporary terms, so the people like the mega communists or infrared, or I think it's mainly probably Hazaldin, I'll just use them as an example, that like they accuse them of like sanctifying Stalin and Mao, and only looking at, they have rose-colored glasses when it comes to China or Russia or Palestine, or probably anything. And their response is kind of like, look, you say you're materialists, we're actually idealists, because you have this idea in your head of how things are supposed to look like and how they're supposed to develop. And anything that doesn't go with that, you want to, it's whatever. It's right wing, it's racist, it's too religious, it's too that. What I'm playing around, and I might not have been the first person to come up with this kind of Goldilocks politics. Yeah, it says like, well, this one is not enough of this. So there's not enough of a proletariat, or there's not enough of there's not enough of a consciousness. There's not enough whatever, or of enough of an industrial development. And then, oh no, here it's too much religion, too violent, or whatever. It's just kind of like there's never anything that's just right. Which, of course, I think if you're in the business that most people who say they're Marxists of any variety are, which is content creation. Yeah, we read, we whinge, we lament the state of politics, and we have things like this. So of course, if your main game is commentary, it's easier to comment with the shortcomings, all the problems, rather than, okay, given what's going on, what are the options, and kind of like try to game it out. And then we try stuff, it doesn't work, like you said, kind of pragmatic, maybe a bit to quote Cornel West, who may or may not still be running for president, kind of a jazz man, jazz man for politics. I'm a jazz man. You gotta be. You can't get too constrained with the whatever.
I wish you were that kind of jazz man. Yeah.
Yeah, really, really. But would you kind of agree with that? Whatever it is I just said, if you made anything out of it?
Yeah.
Or disagree? It's fine.
There's more of a culture. This relates to that whole cultural Marxism thing. There is more kind of, I think, a cultural lean in Trotskyism, even though they don't seem to be aware of it. But whereas Stalin and I would say Lenin are more focused on pragmatics and economics, but also you could argue that they're more democratic, or at least more populist, right? Because they would say you have to be where the people are, and if the people are devoutly religious, then you have to take the masses of people as being devoutly religious, and if they're want to wage a anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist struggle on that basis, then you accept that and you support that. And it's also go ahead.
No, it's kind of a weird kind of I don't know what kind. I'm into metaphors lately, or analogies. Not that other people aren't. But it's almost like this weird kind of white man's burden thing. It's like they're not developed enough yet to be able to do X, Y, or Z. So you have the whatever it is. So if it's too religious, or if they don't have gay pride parades, or if they don't think that trans is a magic prefix, or or I don't know, they don't hate the family structure, or they don't think the nuclear family structure is the worst invention ever, or whatever. I'm being a bit tongue in cheek here, but not too much. So it's almost like, but you could to kind of go psychologically, it's like they seem to not want any revolution, really. They seem to, if it, like again with the Goldilocks thing, it's never in the middle. It's never in the Goldilocks zone enough to really do anything besides this kind of comment from the sidelines, or make an excuse for not participating.
Right.
And I think before I turn it over to you again, it seems that maybe Western Marxism is just the new name for Trotskyism, or kind of a not that's exactly the same, but kind of it's so like we get Hegelian. Okay, so we could say that Western Marxism is maybe I don't know a sublation of Trotskyism, and whether or not it's a negative or a positive one would probably depend on who you talk to. Or am I really going crazy now?
Yeah. I mean,
it's possible.
It's tricky because obviously there's famously many Trotskyist sects. They're famous for splitting, uh, uh, but there are certain generalizations that you can make. And as I said, I think some of this does go back to the beginning, where, and granted, this is primarily based on, I think, what Trotsky didn't write rather than what he did write. But I said the Irish situation, I think he didn't keep up on the Irish thing as much as Lenin and Stalin did, and it may parallel the attitudes that some people have about Hamas, because in the like in their founding documents, they were like openly Christian Catholic, their Declaration of Independence references God and Christianity. And as I said, some of the secondary articles I looked at before going back to this Trotsky Nora Connolly letter. They talk about the Soviets kind of having an ambiguous relationship with this devout Catholicism and really conservatism of most of the Irish revolutionary movement. And they prefer to de-emphasize all the Catholic stuff, but they did ultimately support the revolution.
All right, I just want to, before I forget, I want to throw up. I don't want to throw up. I want to put up. My God, that's a Freudian slip. Maybe I want to. No, I don't think I want to throw up. I found this book, or these two things. And let me get my little crazy logo off of there. See this? I need an executive producer to help me out here. Oh, there you are. Oh, there we are. I was like, where'd we go? Okay. So this is a picture of Trotsky. I think it was sometime after 1917. It might have been I think it might have been the early 1920, but he's on a tank. He's on some sort of tank. So he's, he was feeling it there. I think he liked being on that tank. And then what I thought was kind of funny. Yeah.
Trotsky the tanky.
Yeah. I thought that was, kind of, I don't know, like, yeah.
I mean, some people
go ahead.
In the anarchist community, I think they consider Trotskys to be tankies, but
to be what?
I think in the anarchist community, and I suppose in the liberal community, even Trotskyists are considered to be tankies, but those are non-Marxists.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, if you could squint, you're like, who is that? No. Okay. Anyway, but just based on what you've been talking about this evening, I'm like, okay, yeah, I could see where he would, I think maybe the pomp and circumstance and like the poetry of it all. When you mentioned that he was a big fan of Napoleon, even though Napoleon crashed and burned, it's like I could kind of see this kind of reading of the history. It's like, yeah, but he fulfilled his historical purpose, so and that's all that kind of matters.
Did you say Napoleon?
Yeah, when you said that he like that his fast or his affinity with Napoleon, yeah, and how he thought that that's the if I understood correctly, that he kind of had that idea in mind about the next steps that they should have taken to be more, because what I didn't realize is that that when the permanent revolution, or the reason why he was against, or seems to be to have been against socialism in one country, because he thought that socialism should have been spread through imperialist means. Is that an accurate statement, or is that a bit?
Basically, I mean, he wouldn't have phrased it that way.
Okay.
But I think, as I said, definitely the emphasis that he put on projecting Soviet power, into Europe in the 20s, not in the 40s, but in the 20s, and the sort of short shrift he seemed to give to nationalism, to national self-defense. determination, as compared to that Lenin and Stalin put on it. It looks like that's what permanent revolution meant to him.
Okay.
He definitely wanted to ride that tank into Berlin in 1920. Lenin wouldn't let him.
Good one, Garret. Yeah. Who'd had to have like safety harness or something. Now, is this book on the right? Is this an actual thing? Because I came across this right before we started, and I was like, did he write a book called Stalin? I guess it could have, but I love how.
I think so. I mean, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, good. Because I didn't have time to check it, but I love. I'm guessing the publishers did this later, or is this an actual photo that they found? I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, because it looks like.
I guess it could be a mock-up of photo editing from the Soviet archives.
Because possibly. I know there's a joke, at least a thing about like Stalin, the show trials were purges, and how when people were purged, they would go through and take them out of the history books. I don't know if that's true or not, but this seems to be. I mean, you can tell if this is the cover of the book that Trotsky. Well, I don't even know. I'm guessing back when he was alive, they didn't do these fancy covers. But somebody decided to put this on a cover of a recent or whatever the last publication of his book was. I thought it was kind of funny. I mean, all these people are actually
Trotsky was a very, very prolific writer. I don't know how many books he wrote, but he definitely wrote a dozen at least, and some of them were historical. The history of the Russian Revolution is a pretty highly acclaimed book, and I think he wrote biographies of Lenin and Stalin. Of course,
sympathetic, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, there was a certain amount of self-promotion, obviously, and political warfare in writing those books. And I am reminded of the quote from Winston Churchill. I don't know if you ever heard the quote that someone said to Churchill about, "Do you worry about how his history will judge you?" And Churchill said, "No, because I'll write the history."
Yeah. No, I mean, very true. That
Churchill also had a huge influence on how he's perceived.
Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah. You don't have to worry about how history remembers you if you get to dictate how the history is written. Of course, he didn't realize we'd have all this. That at a certain point that history would be pried open a bit.
He wasn't ready for Tariq Ali, one of the few Trotskyists I like.
Oh, is Tariq also a Trotskyist? Yeah. Trotskyism was big in labor, right? Because also I think Corbyn is it says he's a Trot. I mean, I think he says he is. I think I think most of labor that actually is socialist would say they're Trotskyist.
Yeah.
And I really never knew what that meant. I knew I was like, okay, whatever. Because again, I didn't take it that serious. I was like,
you froze up.
Okay, sorry. Can you? Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you repeat what you said?
Yeah, just that it's my understanding that a lot of the people who say they're socialist in the Labor Party, that they're I think they say they're Trotskyist. And for the longest time, I didn't really pause and consider what that actually meant. I was like, okay, well, I mean, but now I'm wondering in what way then? In what way? I don't know how much time how closely you follow British politics, but what aspect of Corbynism would you say is Trotskyist, in your opinion? Or the Corbynism that wasn't?
I don't know. I'm not sure he is an archetypal Trotskyist. He may be.
Hitchens also was, before he.
Yeah, their politics were very different, or their positions were very, very different.
Well, I don't know if that's true. After 9/11, they became quite different, but before that, I don't know. But yeah.
But I think.
But what would you say? So, in terms of if we wanted to say like the gist of what, if I didn't just want to call someone a Trotskyist to be mean, or a Stalinist to be mean, if I actually wanted it to to go along with their political and theoretical positions. What would you say are like the three indications that they may not think of themselves as Trotskyist, but they're coming from a Trotskyist kind of worldview? What would you say are the three or four indications of like, Trotskyist? Because it's really important. Yeah, I told you, but the people are like, they'll try to press me, like, "Are you this or that?" And I'm like, "Calm down. Like, what does it matter?" But if it matters, I want to know that I'm appropriately categorizing people.
I think you were onto something when you suggested that it is the default position of Western leftism. So maybe everyone's influenced by Trotsky. Whether
we're all Trotskyists now. Is that?
I'm sure we were all Trotskyists in high school because, as I said, George Orwell was sympathetic to Trotsky. And Christopher Hitchens too. He's an influential figure in the Orwell tradition.
Well, we could say that a Trotskyist would be, we probably wouldn't hear a Trotskyist supporting Palestinian armed struggle. Is that, which is ironic given the fact that he seemed to be into it. Anyway.
Well, I don't know, because I mean, it's tricky because even Hitchens supported the Palestinians, although I don't know if Hamas was really running Palestine in his pro-Palestine period, but he probably felt differently about Hamas. And as I said, his general neocon bent post 9/11 was de facto anti-Zionist. I mean, de facto Zionist, even if he claimed to be anti-Zionist.
Okay, let's do it. Maybe an easier one. Let's take China. So if I'm listening to someone who says they're a Marxist, Leninist, or a Marxist, whateverist, what kind of like stereotypical, or like if you were going to say give a comment about Xi and the Communist Party right now, or China right now, if you were going to put your Trotskyist hat on, how would you describe what's going on in China in terms of them, moving towards socialism, or the dictatorship, the proletariat, whatever word they might use? So now you're a Trotskyist. So is China communist? Trotsky, no, Garret, are they communist?
No, I think the Trotskyist line would be that they're state capitalist.
Okay.
And what is it, social imperialist? Well, that's kind of a Mao thing, but it's kind of turning it back. But
well, like we could use Control. Control would roll his eyes at the idea that somehow China's at the vanguard or at the head of whatever we want to say, like the current, like, whatever movement there is, towards socialism, that China's at the head of that. He would roll his eyes. Yeah, he would roll his eyes at that. Why? So I'm assuming. So why the eye roll?
They'd say it's socialism in one country, and that's a contradiction in terms. That's a betrayal of Marx, and socialism has to be internationalist, or it's nothing.
But how can it be internationalist all at once?
That's a good question.
Big Bang.
Looking at it realistically and materially, as a dialectical materialist, not an idealist, I don't see how it would be done, especially when the Russian Revolution wasn't able to set it off.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said,
I wonder what does that mean then? I really want to know what that means.
Lenin was an advocate of socialism in one country. It didn't start with Stalin. That's just a fact.
Because my question is, if it's like, no, this is the idea that you can have socialism in one country. It's like, well, how else would you have it start? I mean, I'm just really, because if they're materialists and you have the forces of production, the relations of production, then of course you have the praxis. So you have to deal with what's going on in front of you and try again, fail better, all that stuff. And of course, you have all the shit coming at you both inside and outside and all this stuff. So how would they, how else would you have it? Because to me, I always thought it was like to be wary of nationalism. Yeah. that the working class, that of course you want to, obviously you need to, you're where you're at, and the economy where you're at, of course, is obviously going to be more important for those for. But the idea that the idea that so that the capitalists can't play one country or one group of working classes off of the other, there has to be international solidarity. Fine, but how does that equate into there not being that somehow what's going on in China always being suspect, or what went on in or whether it be China or Russia, or is suspect. I don't mean Russia now, but I mean, I'll say Soviet Union, um, suspect because of this. Like, how else would it? Unless they're thinking it's going to be some sort of Hegelian quality quantity measure thing, that at a certain point there's certain quantitative shifts, and then it's just a formal acknowledgement that we're all socialists now, or something. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know if
they
you could just, what do they
all,
actually
all
mean by that then?
all that is really sketchy, and
Okay.
I find that sketchiness suspicious.
Mm.
But what was I going to say? As I said, the best like real world example, it seems to be Napoleon, which doesn't end well for France.
Hmm.
Uh, but they would argue it ends well for the rest of the world in the long run.
Okay, that's also interesting because aren't um I'll just say Western Marxists slash perhaps post Trotskyists, maybe post rather than neo, maybe it's post Trotskyists. I don't know. We'll have to. I'm someone else will have to decide that. I'm not equipped. I'm not worthy of making those kinds of uh, declarations. Um, but oh crap! Now I forgot. I was gonna say something and I can't remember. Okay, go ahead. Maybe
Hey,
it'll come back to me.
can I get some water? Uh, can I just step away a second and get some water?
Sure, sure. And also, let's see. We should probably try to wrap up in like 10 minutes or so.
Sure.
Yeah, because I have another thing going on. Whoa. Okay,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, get some water. And I'll just put the music on, and we'll come back like in 5 minutes,
Okay.
and then maybe we'll do like 15 more minutes, and then I'll make Garrett promise on camera that he'll come back soon. But go ahead and I'll go ahead and drop you down, and you can get your water. All right, Garrett's gonna go get some water. We're gonna come back in about 5 minutes and kind of try to summarize or talk a bit about in the last 15 minutes, maybe more about how the Trotsky versus Stalinists, or Trots versus Tankies, is playing out right now, particularly in some of the newer, at least online movements. I can't speak to their on the ground activities when it comes to Midwestern Marx or infrared Hazaldine, and then also we have Dora the Explorer, aka Jackson Hinkle, that we can talk about. But we'll be back in about 5 minutes, so stay tuned. All right. Let's see. Here we are. So we are back and we are going to just wrap. We're going to have about 15 minutes or so. And I was thinking what we could do is, yeah, so in terms of trying to talk about what this, the tanky, to use those terms analogously, what would you say? What kind of divides on the so-called Marxist people who say they're Marxist? We'll just take them at their word. What are kind of the divides that you think we could fit into this binary? How is it still useful, and why are people still calling lots of each other? I mean, just the other day, as an example, what also made me start thinking about this. And that might have been what, yeah, anyway, I shouldn't think out loud. A couple people were late to watching the video between the debate or discussion between Professor Daniel Tutt and Hazaldine. And there's a couple of people who were like, geez, they would say stuff like, God, this Tanky ate his lunch. I mean, I can't stand this guy. And I found myself rooting on his side like 80% of the time because of all the quote unquote kind of woke or identity politics type of stuff that I don't think Daniel Tutt would think of it that way. So anyway, just in terms of, do you think it's still accurate? What do you make of this, that there's still this thing that this is still an arrow that is, that calling someone a trot or a tanky is still an arrow that's shot quite a bit?
And
do you think it's useful or should we retire it?
Yeah,
we need different slurs to call each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole aspect of this that we haven't touched on. Maybe because it's more debatable that, Trotskyists are more, that they're more petty bourgeois. I mean, those are fighting words, obviously, but but that they're.
And when you say that, because not everybody who may be watching this now or watches it later will know exactly what you mean when you say they're petty bourgeois and why that would be not received well. Why do Marxists like to call each other petty bourgeois so much?
Yeah, well, that they're associated with the middle class, the upper middle class, really, and sort of like the alienated sons and daughters of the upper middle class, not just as individuals, but they have like a community, a subculture that's connected to that involves academia, and it involves political artists, let's say, and that's not the
commentariat.
Yeah, and that may not be a good thing.
Trying to break into. So hey,
Yeah, and that may not be a good thing. That's a very different thing from the masses of working class people, and that and you could argue that Trotsky had those inclinations, but Lenin and Stalin didn't, and that's why they were more conservative. Is because the masses of people are conservative. Socially conservative.
Yeah, okay. I was just going to say that doesn't it seem that that basically, isn't it just, if calling someone a Trotskyist, isn't it just another way of saying they're an idealist? Or is there a distinction without a difference, or is there a difference?
Well, so, I guess that's what Stalinists mean by it.
Well, I asked because to bring into contemporary times,
Trotskyists would not identify themselves that way.
I bring this up because in our current times, Midwestern Marx, I think, makes a lot out of this. I'm not an expert on their content, but as I understand it, they are kind of take aim at Western Marxism / woke left / Trotskyist, kind of all kind of goes in the same thing, and they are working a lot with this notion of the purity fetish, which is basically the idea that what's going on doesn't match this version in your head, so what's going on is somehow wrong or shouldn't be bothered with. You have to wait till things on the ground align with whatever image you have in your head before you can go forth and commit yourself to glorious revolution with your comrades. So
that definitely applies to some Trotskyists, like the ones that we've engaged with on Twitter. Yeah, I don't know if it applies. I don't know if it applies to all of them, but it definitely applies to some.
Well, yeah, because here's the thing: is that people could be. I mean, there's lots of labels that could apply to me that I wouldn't consciously come up with it myself. I mean, I'd have to know, the argument or whatever. So we could say objectively. So it's not like not necessarily. It's not so much important who identifies as this or that, but who objectively kind of meets this criteria. Again, because these things are going. I mean, I think maybe it just could be the online contingent of the people I'm trying to engage in some digital ethnography from. That's how I rationalize my social media time. I'm conducting research, Garret. But I think they're quite young in general, I think. And so I don't know if it's just because they don't, and also online and Twitter kind of encourages this kind of snappy thing that I also like in a way. But it seems like whenever somebody posts something, whether if it's a fairly large account, so like Hazaldin or something, inevitably you're going to get the people coming over like, oh, he's a tanky, or he's an edgelord, or he's, just whatever they want to call demagogue, this, that, and then somebody else. And then it rarely is there, of course, there's a space. And then again, you get into this Trotsky. He's a Trotsky, or no, not Hazaldin, but who's a Trotsky, who's tanky, which refers to Stalin because of Hungary. Why do they call them tankies again? I forgot to ask that. I think you told me once. I don't remember. So why are Stalinists? I know why Trotskyists are called Trots. I mean, that makes sense. But why are Stalinists called tankies?
I think it may apply to Hungary. Yeah.
Hungary.
Although ironically, I'm not sure if Trotsky were alive during Hungary in 1956, I'm not sure he would have opposed that, actually, because as I say, he was not big on national self-determination.
Okay, so this is another possible irony, is that tankies get the name from when Stalin decided to go into, made the decision to invade. But it wasn't, I guess
Stalin. That was Khrushchev. Well, Hungary in 56 was Khrushchev. But
okay, Khrushchev.
Ironically,
but still. Okay, but they call them tankies, and tankies is supposed to be a word for Stalinists, yes? Or am I?
Came from those, Western communists who decided to side with the Soviet Union against Hungary.
Okay. So I thought, am I getting my?
I think that's the origin.
My name's wrong. Anyway, yeah. So, do you think it's just So I don't know. I think that. I guess I'd ask you, obviously this history is important. It's not like it's resolved definitively. Obviously there's still these divisions, fault lines perhaps. Sometimes you wonder if it makes sense for some of these groups or some of these ideologies or political practices to be even under the same rubric. I mean, the left is different. Left is more broad, obviously, than Marxists. Or socialist or communist. Left can be, all kinds of things. So I guess I don't know. If you had to pick, if you had to say like gun to your head, sorry, but revolution is revolution. Had to say, I think we know the answer to this. If let's say that there is a grand sorting, it's like the sorting hat. It's a grand sorting, and everyone has to either go to the side of the room that's the Trotskyists, or the Trots, or the tankies. Which side of the room would you go to, and how unhappy would you be about it? Hypothetically.
No, I don't think I'd go to that side of the room.
You couldn't go on the Trotskyist side. Even regardless of how they understood it themselves, you'd be like, okay, hardcore Garret. Nice. Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I think go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that the Trots have done some positive things, but I don't know. I don't think they've done more positive things than the Marxist-Leninist parties have done. In the West, the Marxist-Leninists were out of commission. Like there was stuff in the early '60s, like the Socialist Workers Party, like the Socialist Workers Party in the U.S. was like very supportive of Malcolm X. But they were kind of the only communist game in town. Like the CP-USA was out of commission, pretty much. Red Scare.
Yeah, I mean, you could almost say that it's kind of, I don't know, that there's the Trotskyism, I guess, just based on I'm taking everything Garret has told me I'm assuming it's correct and accurate, and that anything that we have not covered tonight is not important. I'm making that assumption, people. That it seems it was kind of reactionary then. Would you say? Like, it's, Trotskyism.
Trotskyism?
Yeah.
Again, I mean, it's definitely the side of Marxism of revolutionary is more comfortable with. I mean,
the revolution that never comes. We love that one the best. The revolution that happens later or happens over there, that's my favorite one. Because then I get to have my beautiful full hands clean. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that's just a standard divide and conquer tactic. They want to play up that rivalry, but to pick sides in the rivalry, it obviously is safer to pick the side that doesn't win. It doesn't win. Yeah. Doesn't take over states and wield state power against.
Well, yeah, and to use not so coded language to be on the side that doesn't get infiltrated by the CIA organizations. Just saying, one side seems to be a target more. Sorry, who got infiltrated? Everybody's an infiltrator or infiltrated. Yeah,
but they usually implode after that. They don't become like zombies of the CIA or the FBI. Although actually, I mean, the Communist Party of the U.S. could be called a zombie of the Democratic Party at this point. But.
Or just just the accoutrement, like our progressive side. Look at that. It's like the that crazy class you took in college or something. Can relive it. Okay, well, thank you, Garret. I have a much better understanding of the historical and geopolitical factors behind the so-called Trotsky-Stalinist divide, and a better understanding of how Joe took over, for lack of a better word, after Lenin passed. We seem to, House of Dragons. Go, yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, and actually, I don't know if you like fantasy, but it is quite good. I mean, I was surprised how good it was. But when you said, at least, but I was like, oh my God, they ripped that right. I mean, so somebody's a tanky. I think someone's a tanky on that writing crew. Someone's a secret Stalinist on the House of Dragons team. Anyway, so watch House of Dragons, because apparently that could have been Stalin and loosely based, because obviously he wasn't a Targaryen who could withstand dragon fire, as far as we know. So it seems like, what we would say is that when people call someone a Trots or a Trotskyist, it's kind of the idealist, it's never going to be the right time or the right place. There's always, that it's never going to be, yeah, it's never going to be the right time for a revolution or the right movement in history. So it's kind of like me and my diets, always tomorrow or next time things will align. And this could be an unfair characterization. It could just be very cautious, or just or maybe they're just really progressive, uh, enlightened bourgeoisie, and that's fine. Um, well, yeah. And yes, they're very suspicious of people who want to take China seriously as moving, um, uh, uh, as where the movement towards attaining a more fuller, more well developed, or more geographically comprehensive socialism. They have their issues with that. Yeah, so I think that's the kind of I don't know. Maybe they're always complaining, and then um, on the other side, yeah, they think that you have to. The Tankies would be obviously more in terms of, look, the situation is what it is. You have people who are trying to work the long haul towards reaching towards building socialism. I think they use the word build a lot, which is important: constructing, building, forging, figuring it out, etc. And that, yeah, that's not going to look pretty, and it's not going to be a linear process, but that we're not. I think they would say, and I think Haas and those people have said it, that if you up your nose at this and are always kind of Goldilocks, either it's too much of this or too little of that, then why do you even call yourself a Marxist? Call yourself something else. That's kind of how I maybe see it. That there wherever the action is either going to be too sexist, too homophobic, not industrialized enough, too petty bourgeoisie, too much peasants, too this, that, whatever, too whatever it is, and that's the best way to not have permanent revolution, but to permanently defer revolution. And that, in a nutshell, is the problem that the Tanky side would have with Trotskyists, perhaps.
That about sums it up.
Awesome. See, I listened to you, Garret, and I learned.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on. It really was. I mean, I mean, I'm joking around, as is my character, but I really do appreciate it. And I've learned a couple of things, more than a couple of things, and I have some more things to add to my reading list. So thanks for that. Anything you want to say before we sign off about this, or just anything to do with Trots and Tankies feud? Apparently, it's going to be we're. Do you think we're any closer to this being resolved than we were 50 years ago, or is it just we're just stuck in this loop?
Well, I mean, there's definitely more questioning of Trotskyism today on the left, I think, than there has been in many decades. So we'll see what happens. And then there are people who are sort of intuitive anti-imperialists, liberal. You might call them liberal anti-imperialists. I don't know, but a liberal anti-imperialist is probably better than a pro-imperialist Trotskyist.
And it almost seems, would it be fair that again, I'm not going to say there aren't people who say they're Trotskyists who really aren't, like, they know their history and his writings and all this stuff. But do you think that part of it also would be that people who were sympathetic or interested in the politics, but they couldn't deal being associated with Stalin? So the best thing about Trotsky was that he wasn't Stalin. Did you say there was any of that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the way I came to it. I mean, I used to be a liberal, and then I was an anarchist, and then I was a Marxist with, I guess, Trotskyist leanings.
Trotskyist tendencies.
Because
non-binary Marxist.
Because I believed everything that I was told about Stalin, and my image of the Soviet Union basically came from, which was shaped by impressions that George Orwell had given me.
No,
and,
I mean, I grew up, and I don't know, I don't know if I think we're definitely the same generation. So I guess it doesn't matter who's older than who, but we're definitely, I think I'm a few years older than you. But anyway, we're Gen Xers. But
right.
yeah, I mean, for the longest time, and even still, I mean, to say you're a Stalinist would be like saying you're a Nazi. I mean, it was like, it was like, woo, because it was like Gulag, crazy dude, all this just, all the stuff that we hear that he killed, 1 billion people or whatever it was. And I'm not saying, and again, I can't say because my
both the Democrats
my
and
knowledge of
Republicans
history
say
is
that, so it must be true.
Well, it's true, and Trotskyists apparently. So yeah, well, no, and here's the thing: is that I don't my knowledge of that period of history of Soviet Union history is Spartan, and I don't know. And I'll ask you maybe offline if you can send me. I know you mentioned a couple of books, because I also know there's probably a lot of things that just aren't translated in English because a lot of publishers probably weren't hip to offer alternative histories of Stalinist Russia.
Well, there's that book that's kind of hot, or there's a buzz about it by the Italian scholar Dominic Losurdo.
Oh, okay.
And he wrote a book called.
He wrote something about liberalism. I'm familiar with him.
Called Stalin.
Midwestern Marx likes him a lot.
Yeah.
Too.
Stalin, the History of a Black Legend. Which
yeah.
I think you might be able to get a free PDF of it.
Is it translated though, or is it in Italian?
Yeah.
I don't speak Italian. No.
Yeah. No, I mean it was hard to get a hold of in English for a long time, and there are people trying to get Verso books to translate it, and they wouldn't, even though they had a contract with Losurdo.
Yeah, it's just this bad. Yeah, I mean, just that alone. That when you start to look at how suppressed and how how kind of a monster image it's been caricatured, it makes you, even that alone, you're like, okay, well, there's something that's not. Either it's a very partial thing, and they're only focusing on the atrocities that occurred, the bad things that happened, and leaving out everything else, or they never hear a rumor that they don't like if it's negative about. I don't know, but that's the other thing, is that you don't know what to believe. But if there are some good books out there, that would be good, because again, I don't read but again, of course, even if things started to come out or more stuff came out that was translated from people who were historians that were there, then people would say, oh, it's propaganda, or it's just stenographer, or they're just sanctifying him, or which of course is like, we don't do that with our great leaders of history.
yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much, Garret. I appreciate it. I hope we were going to try to. Garret was also going to help me. I have a couple of what do you call them? I don't even know what to call them. X articles, Substacks, or something that I've been finally finishing up and getting out. And there was one on how centrism is a lie, or the center doesn't exist. The kind of getting at. Kind of trying to critique this notion of center and centrism, and how it's the rational, moral, and evidence-based position, and the kind of the role that plays in our political discourse and imaginary. And Garret was willing to talk to me about, to discuss that with me. Hopefully, and I really want to do that, and I would love to have you back on, and we can do that again. And if there's and I could do the same for you if you have a piece that, it doesn't have to be a new piece; it could also be an older piece. But I very much would like to talk about that, because that piece it was just kind of me getting my thoughts together on this topic. And then I thought, is there some way I could, structure it that it seems like it could have been written for other people? And I still have some teacher in me. So I wanted to, also mention, if there were people out there who are interested, there's a variety of research questions and theoretical frameworks, and you can bring to bear on that. So I do very much want to take a rain check on that with you. But yeah, thanks, Garrett. Any final words for our small but growing audience now or in the future about any topic? Anything you want to plug? Anything you got going on? Or just a well wish
I
from
don't.
the river
I
to the sea?
Well, I'm the social populist on Substack.com.
Oh, that's right.
I haven't
Yeah.
published in a couple of months, but you should go on there and read what's there, and I'll try to get something up in a couple of weeks. I've been pretty busy. But,
I can recommend it. Yes, I forgot about that. I'm a bad host. Yes, you can read. Garrett has a Substack. It's called the Social Populist. I'm a subscribe. I'm a free subscriber because Tara's on a budget. But as soon as I can, I'm gonna bump up to a paid subscription. So those out there who can support us, we are independently. We're independent mom and pop shop. Not him and I, but in general. So please like and subscribe. This podcast, if you're on X, like or subscribe there, on Rumble, on YouTube. Check out our Substacks, etc. And thank you very much again, Garrett. Until next time, comrade. See you. All right. That has been another Morbid Symptoms podcast. I'd like to ask you again to, wherever you're watching this, to consider liking, subscribing, following, forwarding, etc. And if you have extra money and want to support us, that's great. We're trying to put out 2 podcasts a week and at least 1 Substack or X article a week. So with that, I'll bid you adieu and see you next time.